You probably did everything you were told to do. You went to school. You passed exams. You graduated. You believed that if you followed the rules, life would make sense. And yet here you are, earning money but never quite feeling secure. Working hard but always a little behind. Doing okay on the outside. Nobody warned you that this part would feel like this. School made you believe that being smart was enough. That good grades would protect you. That effort automatically turned into stability. But real life doesn't work like that. You can be intelligent and still be broke. You can do everything right and still feel like money controls you instead of the other way around. And that's not a personal failure. It's a missing skill set. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't say out loud. School didn't prepare you for money. Not even close. It taught you how to memorize, how to follow instructions, how to pass tests that end the moment you leave the classroom. But it never taught you how money behaves in real life. How it leaks, how it compounds, how it quietly rewards some behaviors and punishes others over time. So you step into adulthood thinking you're equipped. And then reality hits. Your paycheck feels smaller than you expected. Bills arrive faster than you planned for. Savings never seem to grow, no matter how careful you think you're being. And slowly, without anyone explaining why, you start blaming yourself. You think you're bad with money, that you lack discipline, that everyone else somehow understands things you missed. But what if the problem isn't you? What if the problem is that you were never taught the rules of the game you're now forced to play every single day? Money is one of the most powerful forces in adult life. It shapes your choices, your stress levels, your relationships, your sense of freedom. And yet, for most people, their entire financial education comes from trial and error, from mistakes they can't undo, from stress they normalize because they think it's just how life is. Think about that for a moment. You were taught how to solve equations you've never used again. You were tested on facts you forgot the moment the exam ended. But no one sat you down and explained why your money disappears faster than it arrives. No one explained how small decisions quietly stack up over years. No one explained why do people earning the same amount can end up in completely different places financially. So instead, you learned money through pain, through overdrafts, through stress purchases, through regret, through the slow realization that earning more doesn't automatically fix anything. This video isn't about blaming schools, and it's not about shaming you. It's about naming the gap between what you were prepared for and what adult life actually demands. Because once you see that gap clearly, something important changes. You stop seeing money problems as personal flaws. You stop thinking you're broken. And that's where real control begins. Not with complicated strategies, not with fancy systems, not with extreme discipline, but with understanding. Understanding the money skills that were never taught to you, and how that absence quietly costs you far more than you realize. Not just in numbers, but in peace of mind, in options, in the feeling of being calm instead of constantly alert. If you've ever wondered why money feels harder than it should, why adulthood feels like a test you were never given the study guide for, why you're always managing money but never feeling ahead, this is for you. Because the most expensive lessons in life are often the ones we were never taught at all. Let's talk about what this actually looks like in everyday life. Not the dramatic version, not the extreme cases, just the quiet, normal situations most people live in every day. You get paid, and within a few days, the money already feels spoken for. Rent, bills, groceries, a few small things you didn't plan for. Nothing reckless, nothing irresponsible. Yet somehow, there's never much left. You tell yourself you'll save next month. You'll be more careful next time. You'll get serious once things calm down. But they never really do. There's always another expense, another reason to delay, another month where money feels tight for reasons you can't fully explain. You open your bank app and feel a small spike of anxiety. Not panic, just that subtle tension in your chest. You don't want to look too closely, because looking closely means facing questions you don't have answers to. Where did it go? Why does it feel like I earn more but have less? Why does everyone else seem to manage this better than I do? So you cope. You avoid checking balances too often. You round numbers in your head to feel better. You make mental promises instead of actual plans. You tell yourself you're not that bad with money. And maybe that's true. But deep down, there's a feeling you can't shake. A feeling that money is always slightly ahead of you, always setting the pace, always deciding what's possible. You hesitate before saying yes to things. You calculate costs silently while smiling. You feel guilty spending on yourself, even for small things. And at the same time, you sometimes spend impulsively, not because you don't care, but because you're tired. Tired of thinking, tired of saying no, tired of feeling restricted. So you buy something small for relief, a moment of comfort, a brief sense of control, and then the guilt shows up later. This push and pull is exhausting. Is it normal to feel stressed about money even when you're working? Is it normal to not understand where your money goes? Is it normal to feel behind without knowing what you're behind on? Most people don't talk about this openly. They joke about being broke. They normalize the stress. So you assume this is adulthood. You assume everyone feels this way. That money anxiety is just the price of being an adult. But here's what's really happening. You're navigating one of the most important systems in your life without a map. Imagine being dropped into a city you've never been to. No directions, no signs, no explanations. You wouldn't blame yourself for getting lost. Yet with money, that's exactly what we do. We expect ourselves to just figure it out, to magically know how to balance spending, saving, planning, and preparing for the future. And when we struggle, we internalize it. We think we lack discipline. We think we're careless. We think we're bad with money. But the truth is simpler and more uncomfortable. You were never shown how money actually moves through your life. Not in real time, not emotionally, not behaviorally. School taught you how to solve problems that had clear answers. Money doesn't work like that. Money is messy. It's repetitive. It's emotional. It's made up of dozens of tiny decisions that feel insignificant in the moment but powerful over time. And no one ever helped you connect those dots. So instead, you react. A bill arrives, you handle it. A surprise expense pops up, you adjust. A little extra money comes in. It disappears somewhere. You're always responding, rarely directing. This creates a constant low-level stress. Not enough to break you, but enough to drain you. Enough to keep you cautious. Enough to keep you from feeling settled. You might even be doing better than before. Earning more. Being more responsible. Yet the feeling doesn't go away. Because the problem was never income alone. It was understanding. And without that understanding, money becomes something that happens to you, not something you use intentionally. That's why advice like just budget or just save more feels frustrating. It sounds simple, but it doesn't address what you're actually experiencing. Confusion, uncertainty, emotional fatigue. You don't need motivation. You need clarity. You don't need guilt. You need context. And most importantly, you need to understand why your brain reacts to money the way it does. Because until you understand that, every financial decision will feel heavier than it needs to be. And that's where we need to go next. Not into tactics yet, not into steps, but into the real reason this feels so hard in the first place. The reason money feels so difficult has very little to do with math. That might sound strange because money looks like numbers, balances, prices, paychecks, but the way you experience money is mostly psychological. Money lives in your head long before it ever shows up in your bank account. Here's what most people believe. They think money problems come from not earning enough, from being careless, from lacking discipline. So when things feel tight, they try to fix it with effort. They promise to try harder. They restrict themselves. They push down spending without changing understanding. And for a while, that works. Until it doesn't. Because effort without clarity creates burnout. School trained you to deal with clear rules, clear right and wrong answers, clear endings. Money has none of that. There is no finish line, no final exam, no moment where you're done. Your brain hates that. So it does what it always does when faced with uncertainty. It avoids. It simplifies. It reacts emotionally. Instead of seeing money as a flowing system, your brain treats each decision as isolated. This bill, this purchase, this month, you don't feel the future. You feel now. That's not a flaw. That's how human brains work. We are wired to prioritize immediate comfort over long-term outcomes. School never taught you how to counterbalance that. So many decisions quietly become emotional decisions. Spending becomes relief. Saving feels like loss. Planning feels overwhelming. Even when you know better, your behavior doesn't always follow. That's not hypocrisy. That's psychology. Another hidden reason this feels hard is that money was never taught as a habit. It was treated like a subject, something you learn once, then move on from. But money is more like brushing your teeth. Small, boring, repeated actions that matter over time. No one expects you to brush perfectly. They expect you to brush consistently. But with money, people expect perfection. One mistake and you feel like you've failed. One bad month and you think you're back at zero. So your brain associates money with pressure, and pressure shuts down learning. That's why so many people avoid looking at their finances. Not because they don't care, but because it makes them feel incompetent. Another psychological trap is comparison. You see people your age doing better, buying things, traveling, upgrading their lives. You don't see their stress, their debt, their private anxiety. You only see outcomes, not trade-offs. So you feel behind, even when you're not sure what you're behind on. This creates quiet urgency, and urgency leads to rushed decisions. Buying things to feel caught up. Avoiding planning because it feels too late. Assuming you've already missed your chance. That belief is powerful, and it's often wrong. There's also something deeper at play. Money is tied to identity. It influences how capable you feel, how successful you think you are, how safe you believe your future is. That realization hits quietly. You don't panic. You just feel behind. Behind an invisible schedule no one ever explained. This is where numbers start to matter, but gently, not as punishment, as perspective. When you don't understand money, small decisions repeat. You carry balances instead of clearing them. You delay saving because it feels insignificant. You wait for later to start. Each decision feels harmless on its own, but time connects them, and time multiplies behavior. The cost isn't just money, it's optionality. It's the ability to say no without fear, to pause instead of rush, to handle surprises without stress. Without money skills, every unexpected expense feels like a threat. Your car needs repair, a medical bill appears, work slows down, and suddenly, your entire sense of security wobbles. Not because the expense is huge, but because there's no buffer. So your nervous system stays on alert. You live in a state of quiet financial tension, always prepared for the next hit, never fully relaxed. That stress compounds too. It affects your sleep, your relationships, your confidence. Money becomes something you endure rather than use. Over time, this changes how you think about your future. You stop planning far ahead because it feels unrealistic. You stop imagining better scenarios because they feel fragile. That's one of the biggest invisible costs. When you don't feel financially grounded, dreaming feels irresponsible. So you shrink your goals, not consciously, emotionally. You choose safer paths. You avoid moves that require confidence. You stay in situations longer than you should because uncertainty feels worse than dissatisfaction. And none of this feels like a money problem. It just feels like life. Another invisible cost is how long it takes to recover. When you don't understand money, mistakes last longer. A small misstep turns into a long detour. A short-term issue becomes a multi-year recovery. Not because the mistake was big, but because you didn't know how to correct it quickly. Knowledge shortens recovery time. Without it, you pay in years. There's also a cost to self-trust. When money feels confusing, you stop trusting your decisions. You second-guess. You hesitate. You look for external permission. That hesitation costs you opportunities, not dramatic ones, subtle ones. You don't negotiate. You don't ask. You don't act when timing matters. And slowly, your confidence erodes. You become someone who reacts instead of initiates. All of this happens quietly. No one points it out. No one connects the dots for you. So you assume this is adulthood. That stability is fragile. That stress is normal. That money always feels tight no matter what you do. But here's the truth. This isn't inevitable. This isn't your personality. This isn't your fate.
Knowing what's happening, knowing what matters, knowing what doesn't. When you understand money at a basic level, it loses its power to intimidate you. A bill becomes information, not a threat. A decision becomes a choice, not a test. A mistake becomes feedback, not proof of failure. This is where people often say, "I wish I learned this earlier." But that thought misses the point. Earlier would have been nice, but now still works. The most important part isn't when you learn. It's that you do. Because once you see money clearly, time starts working with you instead of against you. Not dramatically, gradually. You stop leaking energy. You stop carrying constant low-level stress. You stop feeling like you're one surprise away from panic. And something else changes too. Your decisions slow down. You don't rush to keep up. You don't buy relief. You don't avoid discomfort automatically. You pause. That pause is powerful because most financial damage happens in speed. Fast spending, fast assumptions, fast reactions. Slowing down doesn't require earning more. It requires understanding more. And understanding gives you leverage, not over money itself, but over your behavior. That's the real turning point. Not mastering money, but mastering your response to it. From here, the path forward becomes much simpler. Not easy, but clear. You don't need to fix everything at once. You don't need to become someone new. You just need a basic framework, a way to see money without fear, a way to make decisions without confusion, a way to let time do some of the work instead of fighting it. That framework is what comes next. Not rules, not pressure. Just simple steps that bring structure where there used to be stress. And once those steps are in place, money stops feeling like a mystery. It becomes a tool, imperfect, sometimes frustrating, but no longer overwhelming. That's the real skill school never taught you. Not how to be rich, not how to win, but how to feel steady. And from steadiness, everything else becomes possible.